Many thanks to the New School for Social Research and Erin Mack. Many thanks to the students, Rezvane, Puyan, and to all the organizers who invited me to share my point of views with you. I'm here for Iran, I'm here for Kian. Kian, with whom I shared a job in Iran, Kian, with whom I shared the prison in Iran, unfortunately. And I hope that our efforts will bring him out as soon as possible and back, first of all, back to his family and later to his friends and comrades. Talking about self-realization, self-organization of the Iranian civil society, it reminds me of my days in Paris when I was a student, and I was demonstrating with the French in front of the Polish embassy in 1981, and sharing the hopes and despairs of the Czechs, the Poles, and many others. And one of my friends, who was very close to Václav Havel, Jan Vladislav, a poet at that time, I remember what he told me. He said that when was in the time of despair, he said, we live in bondage to our political destiny, but we are trying to change this destiny. Well, I've been trying just very humbly on my part to do so, and that's why in the past 10 years, I tried to invite many philosophers to Iran, and among them was Agnes Heller and Adam Mishnik also. This was done very, very consciously, actually, because I thought that they could not because we wanted to prepare a velvet revolution, but because we thought that the intercultural work and the fact that the experience of people on the other side of the universe, of the globe, might be helpful for a democratic transition in Iran. Now, permit me to start with a quote, and I will later tell you who the quote is from. For my part, I'm fairly sure that I have made the choice, and having chosen, I think that I must speak out, that I must state that I will never again be one of those, whoever they be, who compromise with murder, and that I must take the consequence of such a decision. These are words of Albert Camus in 1946, who, convinced that World War II had killed something in us, underlines the renunciation of violence and murder as a moral imperative and an alternative course of action for a world cut off from its future. Well, it seems to me that Camus' challenge is the challenge of all of us today in the Iranian civic movement. The refusal to kill or to legitimate murder is the starting point to which Camus is pointing to us. I do believe, because I think that fearful men and women cannot conceive any particular goals or any particular goods beyond mere instinct of survival, and because fear makes strangers of people who should be friends, because one hates what one fears. It is perhaps too much to hope that a community, a state, or for that matter, even an isolated individual can admit being wrong. And at this level, I'm pointing to the Iranian state first, and after that to the Iranians in general. But to turn human wrongs into human rights is already a step forward, and to do one's best for this change is one giant leap forward. This is actually, what I'm saying, is a graffiti on the wall of Desmond Tutu's house in Cape Town, which reads, "How to turn human wrongs into human rights." When we talk about correcting human wrongs through respect of human rights, we need to have in mind a set of objectives, which includes justice for victims, accountability for perpetrators of crimes, building social solidarity among citizens, re-establishing trust among citizens, and finally, recognizing the right to truth as a general principle of law. Now, revealing the truth, but also, as Eastern Europeans used to say, like Havel and others, living and struggling for truth and in truth, is the most important feature of the Iranian civil society and the civic movement today. In the case of a country like Iran, to have a right to truth is as important as to have a right to life, have a right to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, some people among you might say that the right to truth is still a debated matter. I agree, but nobody will certainly deny its clear link to the concept of human dignity. I think that the unfortunate reality is that Iranian politics has been shaped and practiced for over centuries within a culture of lies and violence that too often rewards unjust and criminal behaviors. And this should capture our attention, a very urgent attention. And this is why I go back to the idea of violence and what causes this violence. Well, most responses actually start to list many things like religion, first of all, poverty, illiteracy, patriarchy, and most of us also believe that this violence in Iran is the result of greed for power among unscrupulous leaders. But the point which I'm making remains that the unethical climate which produces the past, present, and future assassins in Iranian society is a very familiar one. It is an unethical climate not because of Iranians who perpetrate violence, but because of Iranians who accept it, actually, and who look at it as a normal process. That is the reason why, if the who of the democratic transition in Iran is certainly a complex issue, the how of this transition is even more problematic. As such, the process for nonviolent and democratic change in Iran is also a matter of Iranian people to have the courage and suggestiveness to seek the truth. Because my point is that when the truth is not given complete right, right cannot become truthful. And this judgment implies that Iranian civil society is ready to make a distinction between two kinds of approach. First of all, searching for truth and solidarity, and versus lying and using violence. Now, in the weeks and months ahead, we will have to wait and see how this dialectic between the powerless, nonviolent truth seekers in Iran and powerful lie makers and users of violence will work itself out. And as such, the fact that who is in the government in Iran is now a secondary issue. If it is Ahmadinejad or somebody else, I think is a secondary issue. What is now at stake, I think, is to challenge the illegitimacy of violence in Iran. Now, of course, we can say, as many other speakers said, that there are cracks in the current political system which can be seen in many areas in Iran today. First of all, the once all-powerful theocratic principle has been marginalized, it has been weakened. Secondly, ideas such as human rights, political accountability, transparency have found a firm grounding in Iran's civil society. And thirdly, the ongoing telecommunication revolution, the Twitter revolution, YouTube revolution, which Charlie Kurzman talked about, has given Iranian people a self-reliance and self-confidence in opposition to government-run information. So all these aspects are very important for this. And all these aspects and factors have led to the erosion of legitimacy of the theological political system in Iran. Now,